Let's pick things up there for tonight's Political Insider. Joining me, Jonathan Swan, national political reporter for The Hill. Jonathan, let's start with health care. That subject proved to be one of the most contentious of Sunday night's Democratic debate. Where do Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders want to take the country? Are their plans for health care all that different?
This is a fairly interesting split that's opening up between the two leading Democratic candidates. And it's actually a position that Hillary Clinton once held, is Bernie Sanders' position, which is single-payer healthcare, completely socialised healthcare. Secretary Clinton has a slightly less socialised version, which is basically the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. She wants to make slight improvements. And this really gets to the heart of the difference between these two candidates. Bernie Sanders says we need a political revolution, we need to overhaul the system, put in something new and better. And Hillary Clinton is much more cautious, and she says, no, we need to keep what we've got and defend what we've got and make incremental improvements. And I think the more exciting approach, which we're seeing with the polling momentum with the Democratic base, tends to be Bernie Sanders' approach.
Jonathan, let's move on to gun control now. The issue took on special importance. Location had a lot to do with it. The debate was held in South Carolina, only a few blocks away from the Emmanuel African American Episcopal Church. A gunman killed 9 parishioners there last summer. Clinton says Sanders voted repeatedly with the National Rifle Association. Sanders calls that claim very disingenuous. Who's right?
It's a bit muddled. Sanders does have a D- rating with the NRA, so he's no favourite of the gun lobby. However, Secretary Clinton does have a point. There are key provisions that the NRA have supported in the past, which Bernie Sanders has supported. One of them has been giving gun manufacturers immunity. So if you sell a gun to someone and they go out and commit a horrendous crime, the person who manufactured the gun has immunity. Sanders has actually just flipped on that issue, and I think it's really been the pressure from Secretary Clinton on that. Last night she was pretty vicious on this. She tied him to the Charleston massacre. We remember Dylan Roof walked into that church, sat through Bible study, and then slaughtered 9 people. She said Senator Sanders has supported what we call the Charleston loophole, and that's a provision whereby if you have 3 days after you order a gun, if they haven't sorted out the background check, you get the gun anyway. And some people have said that massacre wouldn't have happened without that loophole. So she's hitting him really hard on this issue.
Now, the debate strayed into pretty wonky territory when the candidates got to financial policy. Give us the Cliff's Notes here.
Well, it's actually not that complicated, really. I think the Wall Street Journal summed it up well. They said Hillary Clinton wants to take a scalpel to Wall Street and Bernie Sanders wants to take a mallet. He wants to break up the banks. He wants to reinstate Glass-Steagall, which was decades old thing which separated banks from their investment banking from sort of your mum and pop banking. Bill Clinton actually was responsible for getting rid of that, and Bernie Sanders wants to reinstate it. But really the point is he's making an emotional appeal, which is to say, Hillary Clinton, how could you trust her possibly on Wall Street? She's been purchased by all these hedge fund managers who've given her lavish campaign contributions over many years. She's had huge speaking fees from Goldman Sachs. So what he's saying to the Democratic base is, yes, she might say all this stuff, but you can't possibly trust her given the amount of money she's taken from Wall Street.
And co-moderator Andrea Mitchell brought up former President Bill Clinton's history of infidelity. Sanders called that history deplorable and said he preferred to concentrate on policy matters. It's not the first time Sanders has given Clinton a pass on thorny issues. He didn't press her on the email issue either. Is there a strategic element at play here?
Well, he's sort of having it both ways. There was a sort of something slightly passive-aggressive about this. I don't know if you remember, he was interviewed about Bill Clinton's sexual misdemeanors a week or 2 ago, and Sanders says, you know, what he did, everyone can agree, was disgraceful, and he repeated the word disgraceful, I think, 3 times. And he says, but, you know, I'm not running against Bill Clinton, I'm running against Hillary Clinton, and I'm going to stick to the issue. So what he's doing is really having it both ways. Right. He's gently reminding the Democratic a base of what happened in the 90s, this sort of saga that a lot of people want to put behind them. But then he's also staying high-minded, which is, what he's said he'd do throughout the campaign.
And Jonathan, it's not hard to pick a loser from this debate. Former Maryland Governor Martin OMalley tried and failed to insert himself into the conversation. Is his campaign running on borrowed time?
Well, it was quite interesting. During the debate, Morris, we were looking at Google Trends, and the top trending question for Martin OMalley was, why is Martin OMalley running for president? So I feel that you're right on that question. He's got very little money. I don't know how he's running, frankly. He's got almost no infrastructure nationally. I think we're going to see him probably do very poorly in Iowa, and then I'll be very surprised if he continues on beyond Iowa.
Do you think he's trying to stay on the radar to be Hillary Clinton's VP?
I think he's hit her too hard on too many things for that to be a consideration. I was thinking that originally, a lot of people were thinking that originally, but in previous debates he's really questioned her ethics, and I don't know, I don't see her appointing him VP after the primary campaign that he's gone through.
Good to get your insight. Jonathan Swan, national political reporter for The Hill. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.